I'll bring the January 22nd, 2025 regular board meeting of the Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater Agency order.
Everyone, please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you. Can we have approval of the agenda?
I'll move approval.
Second. I'll second.
Ready to roll call?
Yeah, go ahead.
Vice Chair Harris.
Aye.
Director Segovia.
Aye.
Director Walsh.
Aye.
And Chair Miller.
Aye, and I think we have a, want to make note that, is Mr. Russo joining us or just not on?
Yeah, Mr. Russo is not going to join us tonight. It's reasons.
Thank you. All right, item number 4 is public forum. Public testimony is permitted at this time only on consent calendar items and any item on the agenda other than the action items and other matters not listed on the posted agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the agency. State law prohibits the agency from taking action on any items not listed on the posted agenda. Public comment on items listed on the posted agenda will be given at the time each item is called to discussion. We have any cards for speakers on the public forum?
I do not.
All right, moving on to presentations, introductions, seeing none, we'll move on to our general manager's report.
Yes, I just wanted to point out a couple of things to the board. We have a professional services RFP out for auditing services for 2025 through 2029. We are advertising the first phase of our force main project. That'll begin advertising next week. The OAC roof was completed on January 13th. And then we did, unfortunately, this week lost a rotor or a shaft on oxidation ditch 1. The rotor itself, the rotor itself was 50 years old. So it's useful life was obviously extended. And it's gonna take about 10 to 12 weeks to get a new shaft. And we're estimating the cost right now about $150,000 to replace that shaft and reinstall the rotor. So, and you should see something on the agenda next week to appropriate money for, next month, to appropriate money for that project.
Any comments from, questions from, board members?
Is this the same as the one that was 80 grand just to make the gear last?
We've done, this is the third one in this ditch, so now we've replaced them all. So, this is the third one, but, we have, 2 that are left, we have, 3 oxidation ditches, we have 2 that are left are about 50 years old. And so, we, run to fail on these things. Because they are expensive, and so we're just waiting for the,
You want something you keep on the shelf?
it is not something we keep on the shelf. We do have, it's a 30-foot long shaft. We do actually have one that we're looking to whether we can, repair it. It was one that we took off in the past, and we're thinking we're gonna see if we can repair it and actually have that one setting aside. So at this point, we don't have it, and it doesn't really affect. At this point, it's not affecting our treatment performance.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar will be acted by one motion at the appropriate time. There will be no separate discussion of these items. The detailed discussion is necessary. Any governing board member may request that any item be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Any of our board members wish to remove any items. All right, see none, can we have a motion?
I make that motion.
Second, do we have a second?
Who was the second?
We don't have a second yet.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Vice Chair Harris.
Aye.
Director Segovia.
Aye.
Director Walsh.
Aye.
And Chair Miller.
All right. Item 8, no items removed from the consent calendar. Number 9, old business. Replenish Big Bear unwinding process and alternative considerations. I think Mr. Lawrence, that is your presentation.
Yeah, so, actually, this is just we brought this back in the last meeting in December. The board was asked to go back to the respective agencies and inform them of the potential liabilities, should the project be canceled. I believe each of the representatives have gone back to their respective boards and informed them about the potential cost for that. And so we're really open to discussion about this item, and I leave it back to you if you have any questions for me.
Any comments or questions from board members?
I have a question. Since Replenish has been delayed for a year and the agency has been collecting rates for Replenish, do we still need bridge financing if we fund the design?
No, we actually don't, since has now been delayed for a year. We have accumulated enough funding, approximately about 2.4 this year. So we have on hand around $3.7 million to fund the design and get reimbursement from the granting agencies. So.
Any comments or questions before I open this up to the general public? All right, seeing none, anybody from the audience who can speak for the cards?
Randy,
Under this kind of news, like, details. This kind of late, so I don't know all the details. But it seems to me, given the obvious changes that we are having in climate, that it behooves us to conserve our water. And to that extent, I would be in favor of replenishing there.
Charlie,
Hi, Charlie Brewster, lakefront owner and businessman, 25 years here. Couple things. I looked at your website the other day and I saw you still had 4.5 feet a year increase. So I wrote an article, a little letter to the Grizzly and printed it. And I realized I better meet with my buddy David Lawrence about it because I was going to blindside him. So I went and we spent a couple of hours. And we basically generated this chart that you guys have in front of you. And it has to do with what happens if the lake's full, whatever, if it's 4 feet down, if it's 7.8 feet down. I even increased the amount of flow into the lake, so it made a difference of about 1/2 inch on the 7.8 feet down. I did 18 feet, but some of you think we're gonna have 4 feet of water a year at 8 feet. It's 6.8 inches is all you're gonna get. So that's something we gotta be very aware of. There's not gonna be a big increase to this lake no matter what you do. Couple of other things, I met with happened to be in a meeting with Big Bear Mutual. And they reminded us that no matter what you do, you're gonna have to have an emergency plan if this system breaks. And you can't release the flow, you gotta release it someplace, and they don't want it obviously near the lake. So you gotta have something, maybe you gotta do, Rick and I were talking about having to do the pipeline still going to, sir, I don't know what you're gonna do, but make sure you consider that in the plans. The main thing I wanna talk about though is the fees. You've already got 18% growth in the EDU costs on the property taxes. If you do plan one, obviously you'll kill it. You'll turn that off. But if you do the second, you've got to be careful because Dave says 1.5 years maybe until you're going to have the real construction costs. You're really going to make the hard decision. Are you going to go ahead or not? 1.5 years, you're going to have another 20 and 20%. So you will have committed 60% of these poor people's money into this project. And if you don't do it, you're gonna have to pay them back and you aren't gonna do that. So I would suggest strongly, you put a hold on the next increase. and wait until Dave gets the information on the construction costs, because we were gonna do the hatchery in MWD a couple of years ago. 7 million maybe was our estimate, and even the consultants told us about 7. They came in at 20 million. We had to kill the project, we never did it. You may have that same problem, you don't know what it's gonna cost you here. So all I suggest, please go back to the city or the council and just put it on hold. If you have to start it up again in 2 years or 3 years, then you do that. And I would support that if you get to that point, but don't continue to charge everyone every year. We've already committed 18% increase. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Sandy Stairs,
First, I want to do something that's not in this subject at all. Jackie just laid her first egg.
Congratulations.
What I want to say is I appreciate that some of the members of the board have been meeting with me and trying to work things out and how to meet my needs for making sure we're not approving things that shouldn't be approved, and at the same time move forward with some kind of approval on the EIR and things like that. So I very much appreciate people being willing to meet and work that out. And as long as he's doing, what they said that they were going to do on this, that I understand that things need to move forward because of all the money. Anyway, I will still be watching, and the assurance was that I will have time, I will have an opportunity to be able to comment again before, especially the brine pond is done and before the final decisions on that. So that's the most important thing, is that the public can have those final inputs when we actually know what's happening rather than just guessing. So, thank you.
Daniel Wilbranson,
Here. Hey guys, how are you? Let's see, the Earth has only been here 5 billion years. Our lifespan is less than a fly speck. A fly speck would probably be, I don't know, 20 million years or more. So we're judging things because of this climate change, yet our state of California is doing absolutely nothing but screwing it up with their stupidity. And it's just amazing. Isn't anybody worried about a fire up here? What are we doing for that? Absolutely nothing. There are many things that can be done. And we're doing nothing. We can hook up the sewage and put out the fires with the sewage or something. That would be more than nothing. And then last night at the CSD meeting, I had a person comment about items that from the Monday meeting, when we had it on MLK Day, which was outrageous, and then the change of our president. So I think you could do a little better planning than that, because if that's your planning, it stinks. And then I have to say that that we're not fleecing the public. First of all, when you're talking about anything here, is it going to end up fleecing the public? When you talk about EDUs, you want a new tax. When you talk about tapping into the sewers to put maybe a meter on sewers, that's going to cost many millions of dollars. I don't think that goes free. So don't tell me it's not about money. It's always about money.
Because all the ideas you came up with cost money. So, also, I heard that there was a commotion here on Monday, so I'd like to see those tapes. Because there was only a couple people here. Now, unless that council person talk to other people. Because I'm kind of a troublemaker, and I will continue to be. And I don't care. So, the next thing is, you're talking about toilet to tap. And what's the point of it when nobody does nothing about our forests and to take care of it, whether we have a drought or climate change or whatever you want to call it? You gotta do something. Doing nothing, having luck as a policy is ridiculous. Wind blows 70 miles an hour. I hope you have your car packed, have gas in it every night. And if it blows 70 miles an hour, like we got screwed in Southern California, and the fires are still going, you better get out quick or figure out someplace. Because in Pacific Palisades, they use bulldozers to push the cars out of the way. And I don't know if you guys ever been tried to drive down the front way or back way when it's bumper to bumper. You'll be dead. You'll be barbecued if the wind blows 70 miles an hour or more. I think helicopters can barely fly in 70 miles an hour, and if they try to drop water, it goes down to Lake Arrowhead. So I hope you guys get some perspective, and we need to worry about first things first. We need like a war plan over the next 2-3 years to get things taken care of, putting roads and other things to be able to live here without our house burning down and without getting barbecued. Thank you.
Joyce,
I'm not feeling the greatest, but I'm here. I wanted to tell you first off, I wanted to express my disappointment in having a council meeting, not only on a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. The bigger cities, they made their meeting on Tuesday because of the holiday. And not only that, you interrupted the inauguration of our president. I was celebrating. I didn't want to be here. That was extremely rude of you to do that. Very disrespectful of the public who were in celebration of the direction of our country. And shame on all of you for agreeing to that meeting. You could have done it the next day, anytime, or any of the other days, but that was the wrong day to do it. Most of the country was in celebration. Why weren't you in celebration of our president? Shame on you. Okay, and I'm part of Big Bear here, and we need comprehensive services that are based solely on our community needs. Otherwise, it is taxation without representation. We need to cut the outside regulations and governmental oversight and look at the actual best way to take care of our district. Okay, now we're taking care of Big Bear too, but I'm more worried about my district, the Big Bear City Community Service. So Trump also said we need to restore accountability for career senior executives. So executives need to start being held accountable to what you do in your communities. Also, he passed another executive order putting people over fish and stopping this radical environmentalism to provide water to Southern California. And so everything's about to change. So why are you wasting your time making all these plans when everything's about ready to change? Because the climate change scam is over. Also, he withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. And We also need to clarify the military's role in protecting the territorial integrity of the United States. Well, I'm also for clarifying the role you guys have in protecting the rights of our community members of the Big Bear City Community Service District. East Big Bear First, EBBF initiative. That's what I stand for. So I actually think that Replenish is ridiculous. I think we need to be putting, I agree here. He's talking about what are we gonna do with our water? We have a great place to put a reservoir for water. It's called Baldwin Lake, our natural lake, where we could put the sewer water. And during times of fire, guess what? We've got water. It doesn't hurt the fish. It doesn't take the water out of the lake to protect our forest. It's called Baldwin Lake for a reason. And it could be utilized. We would have to pay for all these expensive pipes. We don't need those pipes. We don't have to pay for the maintenance of those pipes. I'm sick of having to pay for pipes for Big Bear Lake. And I'm tired of paying for high-dollar lawyers for you guys to take away our rights. Where are our constitutional lawyers? Aren't you guys supposed to be taking care of us, the citizens? What are you doing to protect the citizens' rights? That's what I want to know about. And I think this other gentleman talking about putting some of this stuff on hold is what I think we should do, because all these regulations that they're trying to enforce on us that are driving up our costs. Trump also had an initiative that we're supposed to figure out why our cost of living has gone up. It's because of these stupid regulations. We need to get back to what is best for Big Bear, not what's best for some bureaucrats up in Washington trying to tell us how to run our communities. Thank you. Oh.
Sierra,
I'm sorry, I clapped.
State my position in support of the Replenish Big Bear project. The Grizzly did a survey of our community recently, and 46% of those who responded, over 200 people, were in favor of the project. Granted, 19% were like, what is it? Which does speak to the fact that we do need to do a better job of educating the residents in the community here. I think the other thing that hasn't been brought up before, I continue to stay involved with the Rural Communities Assistance Corporation. Has been working on a project here in Baldwin Lake for a number of years, a feasibility study to try to address the uranium issues that we have in Baldwin Lake, and the fact that we have, those of us who don't have wells are on a single point of failure, relying on water haulers, and single water hauler in the valley. That single water hauler, if they go out of business, those residents here in Baldwin will be, quite honestly, out of luck. Because we have no other options. And there are no state laws that really protect us. That water hauler can double our rates. They can refuse service. And I know people for whom both of those things have happened. And there are no state laws that protect us. And so we are really at risk, even here in Baldwin Lake. And we do not receive water from Big Bear City CSD or DWP. But it came up on a recent meeting. Residents were asking, is there water from our local water providers to serve our community if it comes to that? And nobody could answer that question. And so I think that Replenish does also offer that added benefit, potentially, that if we are able to recharge our groundwater, be it here in Baldwin Lake in an area that is outside of the uranium zone, or within the city, you see as, Big Bear City or Big Bear Lake, it offers that additional protection for future service to Baldwin. Yeah, so that's it. I think that there is a majority, not a majority, plurality of residents who supported the project in that most recent survey. And I think that it has additional added benefits to residents who currently are served by that project. And so I would encourage you to consider to continue to support it. And putting the project off continues to increase the costs, unfortunately. As we all know, costs aren't going down, they continue to go up. And so the longer we delay, the more it's going to cost. Thank you.
That's all. Yeah, that's all on cards. So we have three options in front of us. Dave, can you just real briefly explain those three options?
Yeah, so in general, the three options are, option one is basically to unwind the project. We'll close out all of the existing contracts. We would conduct closeout activities. And we would try to get, maybe some of the grants to, reallocate some of the grants to different projects, if that's possible. We would notify the regional board about canceling of the project. We would, basically look for ways to, limit our cost, contact our, granting agencies to limit the cost we would have to pay back to the granting agencies. We would have to obviously engage with other stakeholders and let them know about canceling of the project. Some of the other agencies have been reimbursed grants, grant proceeds, so we would have to let them know that those are possible for to be paid back. I mean, there's a whole list in the staff report about canceling the project and unwinding the project. And then obviously we would have to notify the granting agencies that we were not gonna pursue the project. The other option was to basically evaluate the potential rescope or reduction and cost scenarios. That might be like trying to operate the project in a seasonal basis or reduce some of the redundancies in the actual project itself. Again, there's some definitions in here about things that would be possible impacts. Because if we do reduce it, there may be some impact to the grants as well if we do option 2. And then option 3 is basically to move the project forward. We would finalize the design report. We would update the cost estimates and cost escalations. We would proceed with the project administration and coordination. We would look at, or we would prepare a financing plan to move the project forward. And basically move the design forward for the project. And those are kind of the 3 options that we presented in here. Obviously, the board can choose to do any of the alternatives. Also, I'm sorry, option 3 was also adopting the EIR. So the board can choose to do any of those things or have a discussion and marry a couple together, or, pick and choose what they'd like to do. I would like to mention to you, just so that way everybody's aware, there was an executive order put out by the president yesterday with regard to the grants that we've received. At this point, we don't think our grants are gonna be affected by the executive order. But I did want the board to know that there was an executive order put out. And one of the agencies affected was USBR. We did confirm today that for sure there was several of the grants don't actually are not listed in the executive order as funding sources are different from the executive order and the grants. So at this point, we don't think it's going to affect us, but we want to make the board aware that there was an executive order basically freezing some of the grants. And again, we don't think it actually affects ours. I just wanted to.
So we'll bring this back to the board for comments or questions.
Should I talk? Oh, sorry.
Hopefully my question is quick. The, between option 2 and option 3, I mean, I'd like to see us get to the point where we can actually come up with a design and a real number for the cost of this. Is that in option 2 or option 3? So
Option 3. Option 3 would basically push the project forward. We finished the PDR, which is preliminary design report. We would come up with a cost estimate based on that, and that's based off of what we found in the pilot study. And then the project would move forward. We come up with a financing plan, and we would move forward with the design. And then at the end of the design, we'd be able to give you a concrete number of what the engineer's estimate is based off of the final design.
So the answer is yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. I should say yes. It's in three.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just want to.
First off, I just wanted to thank, Jim, Chair Miller and I met with Sandy. Cause we heard loud and clear, about the brine ponds. And I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. And, we talked about a couple different things that could be done to potentially mitigate the brine ponds. And I think Sandy understands, and I mean, you have my word, that, some concerns, cannot be addressed until the design is complete. So we talked about a different type of mitigations. And David, could you explain some of those?
So basically, when it comes to the brine ponds itself, until we finish the final design, that will help us with to evaluate the environmental impacts of that design. And that is one of the things that Sandy was really concerned about, is that brine pond and how, the birds would be affected and all those things. So one of the things that we spoke about was being able to get through the design process for the brine pond itself, and then have our environmental team review it, and then make a recommendation on what to take to the board for their concurrence on the evaluation. So there are options. There's like an amendment to the existing, there would be an amendment to the existing EIR if it were adopted by the board. It would be an addendum, excuse me. The other option would be a supplemental EIR. So again, if there were minor changes, then we could go to a supplemental EIR to add on to our existing EIR. And then the final one would be a subsequent EIR if there were major revisions required to the existing EIR. So they gave us some, the attorneys gave us some guidelines on what best to, and again, that evaluation would only happen after the design was complete.
Right, wasn't one of those, what came out of our meeting, which was, yeah, I think it had a different name, but it was a focused EIR, wasn't one of those a focused EIR?
Supplement, that's the supplemental EIR, yeah, and that's that focused EIR that Mr. Miller was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure Sandy knew that we, covered that.
Yes, we did, and again, that'll be, evaluated by the environmental team, and then brought, Sandy will have an opportunity to make comment to that design, and then we'll bring it back to the board for consideration at that point.
Just want to add on to that. I think that was one of the concerns that this last time there was not enough time for them to make comments to the plan. So we just want to I think those processes will guarantee that, but I just want to make that note.
Yeah, we will give them plenty of time to give Sandy Sandy and her team plenty of time to evaluate the design and make sure she has time to review it and make comments to that. And I'll make sure that we reach out to her separately to make sure that happens. So.
And also, I mean, I hope I've made it clear to some people in the audience that Replenish Big Bear has been a journey for me. It's been months of homework. I've spoken with people door to door in my district. Every nice or nasty email that I've gotten about it, I've talked to the people. So I consider myself to be very knowledgeable about it. I've made it clear to David that if we do move forward to plan, that we're going to continue to look for state grants.
Yes.
Which we really haven't done a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah,
because
we can't.
We
right.
need a completed EIR.
Right.
And a shovel-ready project also.
Right.
Should we say it's very well with state grants.
So when I got your email showing the potential amount of money that each agency could I certainly don't want Big Bear Lake to owe potentially $804,000 for nothing. And I wouldn't like to see the CSD owe $801,000 for nothing. So, I mean, I would like to see us get to where we can move to approve the PEIR and get it to design, so that then we will know 100% what the cost is gonna be. You know, it's either gonna be, you know, not your contingencies that you've talked about, it's gonna be more, who knows? But all this debate that's gone on in the community would end. And if we were to move forward with the EIR tonight, I just want to clarify, it doesn't mean that the wiki loan is being approved. It doesn't mean, you know, construction has been approved. It means we would look at the figures and that, you know, the board still has to vote on whether or not we're going to proceed with it.
That's correct.
So I would like to make a motion to bring it, direct staff to place it on the February agenda for certification, with language in the resolution, revisiting the brine pond environmental impacts after design is complete through what you talked about in addenda supplemental EIR, depending on findings of the environmental analysis.
Give that a enthusiastic second.
Well, first and second, any discussion on the motion?
Just to clarify, so is the motion to go with option 3, moving the project forward and bringing back the PEIR in February? If I
Yes.
understand correctly?
I'll amend my second to that.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So your understanding is that with the approval of the program EIR, we will have concrete, absolute factual numbers on how much this is going to cost.
When the design plan is done, not just with the PEIR being approved, but we would have a blueprint, as you may call it, of the project.
So the design will solidify the engineer's estimate. And the PEIR will allow us to shop this project for additional grants. And doing both is obviously very beneficial to the.
And also, it's my understanding that we would have something to show for it, right? We would have an EIR that's approved, a design, and we would get, you know, the grants paying for that.
That's correct.
And that even if we decided not to move forward at this time, we would have something to show for it and we could put it on a shelf for a little while and it would be something that could be dusted off at a later date and would be of use.
Yeah, if the board chose at that point, when we're finished with the design, to not move forward, then you would have a shovel-ready project that you could keep applying for grants, additional grants for, and do those, you know, and do exactly what you said, have it ready to go.
Right, it would be, you know, something to show
Shovel
for
ready.
it that somebody else could use, a
Yes.
different board or.
That's correct.
But you still refer to it as an engineer's estimate.
It can only be an engineer's estimate until if the board, the only way to actually go out for a bid for the project would be for funding to be in place. To actually construct the project. Legally, we can't go out to bid unless we have funding in place. And then we could go out to bid and actually get an estimate on the project. And then again, the board could choose to award a project at that point or not.
But it's still a case of borrow the money without knowing how much it's gonna cost.
That is always anytime you construct a project, you really don't know until you go out to bid. And we would have, and unfortunately, the legal requirement for public agencies that we have funding in place based on those engineer's estimate, before we can actually go out to bid. That makes sense.
So it would be like when my husband and I built our house and we had a construction loan. And I guess if any time we had decided we would have only owed what we drew on the loan, right?
Yeah, and you know, again, we would not be authorized. I would not be authorized, Christine, we would not be authorized to draw on that loan until we went to construction. Or unless the board said, oh, we want you to pay for this or whatever. But at this, that would be the only way, say, like we used with you, to move forward. And get a bid, the only way, those funds would be drawn upon is if the board authorized us to do that.
So let me just clarify something too, is that the process of approving the IR and getting to the point where we have one set of plans or cost estimate, that's all already covered in the grant. Right.
That's correct.
So we're not spending any more money in this grant, we're just getting reimbursed.
We'll just be getting reimbursed as we move forward and get billed. We'll be applying for reimbursement, and using our existing, rate structure to, float it until we get reimbursed.
And then it's also my understanding that for us to move forward with the Whitfield loan, support this vote, is that correct?
That's correct. It requires a 4/5 vote to accept the Whitfield loan. And then, of course, to, award the project, and put that in the budget and actually award a project that would also put it in the budget and then award a project that would take a 4/5 vote as well. So even if we had the loan, we couldn't spend the money until the board authorized us to advertise, and then they would have to award a project, and then we would be able to draw money from that loan. So there's a lot of checks and balances. The board has the authority to authorize us to draw, not to draw.
I have one more question, I feel like I keep interrupting, but, if in option 2, where you talked about rescoping, if, just say, it seems like Larry's concerned about, the cost, which, I mean, we all are. But I mean, the cost not,
Yeah.
being able to really pin him down. Could we, at a certain point, change the scope of some of the items in the project to like what was talked about in Plan 2?
Yeah, so during the design process, if we went through the design process and there were, say, right now the plan includes like some redundancies. If we never wanted the reverse osmosis system to go down, we would have extra reverse osmosis chambers there. If we wanted to make those for future to reduce the cost, we could always put them in as an alternative. So quite like what you're talking about is basically have alternatives for the project in the bid. We could definitely do that.
Yeah, because that would definitely be something that, I would be interested in just, keeping on track with it.
Agreed.
I'm done. For now.
At the last meeting, we talked about a change in how you were going to do your contracting and bid awards in terms of making them more malleable.
Well, and you're talking about the fact that the right now, inflation has affected the way our projects are, when we go to bid our projects, the way they were evaluated in the past. A lot of the projects a lot of our equipment was put into our depreciation system based off of when it was installed and the cost to install it at that point. That has been carried forward for almost 50 years now. And some of those, and so when those were put into our capital improvement plan, and then when we actually go to bid them, they turn out quite a bit higher than they were originally. And that has to do with inflation and cost of materials and there are a bunch of other different costs that are involved with that. Prevailing wage is another big one that has affected those numbers by about 30 to 40%. Anyways, so that overall, this project has already taken those situations into account. So we're not faced with that. It's already included in our estimates at this point. And so we won't have the same issue.
Except that that's what I'm hearing is that it is the same kind of issue when you want to come in and tweak things, maybe change things, change the focus, change what you're gonna do. Mainly remember that I voted against that because it was too variable. I would like to see some concrete numbers instead of, well, we think it could be this and we think it could be that. You did send out the email on the 8th saying you couldn't tell us for sure what was gonna happen. But you at least gave us some round numbers, which was the same numbers we had a month ago. Yes, I understand inflation. Yes, I understand that things change, but the CSD had a rude awakening on that. We used to propose replacement costs on vehicles and equipment based on the day it was purchased. And finally, that was changed to not spread it out over, if it had a 10-year lifespan, you took 1/10 of the purchase time. Instead, it was 1/10 of the replacement cost that year. So it came closer. I don't know how anybody could think that it was appropriate to base projected replacement on something that was purchased 50 years ago at a 50-year ago price.
Right.
So
Well, before my time.
I understood, but I'm just saying that. It's just incredible.
Right.
And now we've gone over the last 7 years from a $40 million project to an $80+ million project. Yeah, I know things changed. But it's also a case of, we were told, well, we'll get input from other stakeholders. Well, one of those stakeholders was the MWD. We finally put a full-page ad in the paper that said this was absolutely of no value to them.
I don't believe that was actually the statement for that. That I don't think they actually said that there was no value to them. At all. I think it was and you know, the page that they took out in the paper was, I mean, that was their doing, we didn't have any input on it. But I don't believe it actually said there was no value in them. I think they've always seen the value in it for the valley. And I think they've always seen the value in the project, overall. I just think at that point, at the last word I got from the general manager was that they weren't ready to make a financial commitment to the project yet. That's the last word I got.
When I go back to the day we had a meeting here when their acting GM said no, they had no intention of contributing. They never promised it. Understood. But then when I asked, okay, you're willing to accept the water, but pay nothing for it until such time as we want to take the water back out of the lake and put it in Sand Canyon, then you would charge us something in the area of $3,000 an acre foot, if I remember right. And the answer was, yes, we will charge you. So contribute nothing, but charge for essentially renting some space in the lake. These other participants, stakeholders, I don't see any money coming from the Forest Service or Fish and Game. Mr. Brewster put on his sheet 80 acre feet for the Shade Meadow, which is the stickleback, that got dropped. It's still part of the EIR, but there is no intent to put water in stickleback. Things changed, plans changed. At one point, there was talk about 120 acre feet, not just for the golf course, but another 120 for the bicycle park at Summit. There's a company that advertises on KFI, Moderna, you probably heard of it, from COVID. The lady talks about how they pivot fearlessly. And when you listen to the whole ad, what she's saying is they changed their story a lot. And I have to say on this, it's hard to keep the target acquisition when each time we hear a replenish report, the numbers have changed. I realize these are estimates. I realize these are engineers. I'm sorry if it angers them, but best guesses. But you're asking the people to take on a debt for the next 30 years and realize that at about that time, you may have to start rebuilding the plant and take out another loan. And I look at it, it seemed here tonight, Mr. Trentman was upset that I wasn't considering the economics that this affects. And I said, on the contrary, I look at this and I realize that this debt will probably go on the rest of my lifetime. I will never see this paid. And a lot of people here have invested in their homes, their livelihood. And yet we come along and we didn't just double their fee, we increased it by 147% plus. So yes, it hurts. And I don't want to be like a city councilman who told someone objecting to short-term rentals, if you don't like it, move. If that is the attitude I should take with my constituents, bring on the tar and feathers, because I'm sure that that's what will happen. I do need to consider this, and to me, it is important to know how much this is going to cost. Not just that, well, you know, we think it's going to cost this much. When I built my house, to get the loan, I had to tell them how much it was going to cost. Sure, there was a little padding, but that was for their benefit. Just like this $22 million from the feds. They fund these kind of loans in every state and every possession in the United States. I would say their history is, and experience is, that when they say you better conclude 22 million contingency, they're coming from experience. And that to me is pretty scary, that if they run into enough projects that don't get completed because they ran out of money, and they look at ours and say, well, you say you can borrow 52 and that's going to cover it, but you better add 22 because it's going to cost you more. I know people have said, no, it's going to cost 100 million. I don't know where they're getting that number. I'm just going with the numbers you have given us.
That's right.
The target keeps moving, and that concerns me.
And I appreciate that, Larry, but at this point, what we're trying to get to is that cost estimate that you're looking for. So that's the best we can offer you, just like you offered your bank when you were going to build your house. You needed to have a set of plans and a cost estimate done for that.
I
You know,
know,
my
size over the
suggestion is
property to them.
We
Yes.
get to that point where we get a set of plans and an estimate to present back to the board for their consideration at that point, whether they want to move forward or not. They don't have to at that point, but you can at least have a set of plans and an estimate and make the decision then.
Right, I mean, I'm just trying to get us to where we're not having to pay this money for nothing, have nothing. And at least we have more information to look at that got paid for the grants.
Except that as Mr. Lawrence has explained, okay, we go ahead and do the design phase. And we, in theory, then get the 3.4 million, was it?
The design is, how much the design was? The design is 3.8 million.
3.8, okay. He said that if we got to that point and we had a design, we would not have to pay that back. Now, a lot of these others, we don't know for sure. We said maybe we won't have to pay it back. I would assume we will have to pay these back. But if we don't go ahead with the project, there will still be money that has to be paid back. Because we have accepted and spent grants. Now this final paragraph that mentioned 23.6 million pending grant funding and 52 million pending low interest financing. Okay, we haven't taken that money. We don't owe that back. But we do owe this money that has been spent to even the pilot program. There is money that's going to have to be paid back. I understand that. But the problem is, even that. You can't tell us, is what I'm hearing. You don't know how much we're gonna have to pay back.
Right, and again, like I said, they further discussion.
So, I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree, but with the logic that you're laying out, you should be in support of option 3. So we can actually nail down the best availability of those costs. I've built as well. I understand exactly what you're talking about and coming up with your cost estimates. You have your estimates ahead of time, and then you actually have your building costs coming from general contractors, and again, that goes into loans and so forth. But unless you have the actual plans, you can't really get an estimate. It's just kind of a pipe dream. All you're saying is, well, the cost is X amount per square foot. In general, we're at that stage right now, as if we're building a house, and we're just getting the estimates of the cost per foot. We need a design, it has to be engineered, we need to move forward this to get those figures that you so desire, we all desire to have at that point. That's the reason why we need to take a step forward. And I understand what you're saying, but if we don't do this, we're stuck in this limbo of, it's, you know, it's 50 million, it's 100 million, somebody said it's 200 million. And we don't have anything to show against that except the initial estimate. So I really think we need to move forward with this, answer your questions, answer more questions from the public. And at that stage, then we do have the decision point of, is it too much? Maybe it is too much. Or is it coming under? I don't know. You know, I've seen projects come in under, so. Anyways, we really do need to move forward on this, and I think if we just continually rehash what was talked about over the last, I'll say 36 months, we'll probably never, we're never gonna progress to the point where we can actually get these questions answered. So, we do have a motion in a second.
Yes.
With it, and if there's, I'd like to call a question on the second.
Call the question.
Right.
Yes.
Vice Chair Herrick,
Aye.
Director Segovia,
Hi,
Director Walsh,
No.
Chair Miller.
All right.
Motion passes.
I'm gonna set aside that something in my eye, and you announce it again somewhere then.
Vice Chair. Vice Chair.
You notice there's a line for me. We're in the back over here.
If we get to the decision point, we'll take a pause at that point, then we get to the business session item 10A. Public hearing assembly bill 2561, local public employees, vacant positions.
Yeah, so we're just gonna take this one.
Don't we need to speak on this after you voted on this? We didn't talk, you know, that was open, speaking to yours.
No, you already made a comment on the item before the government board started.
Sorry.
You already made a comment on that item. During that item, at the beginning, you did.
That's when you talked about a second, you talked about a second time.
Yeah, so.
Well, there was your comment.
So I think we're moving on. I'm sorry about that, but
Well,
I
that's
continue
yours.
this.
Okay. Assembly Bill 2561 requires the agency to report the number of vacancies and how the agency is recruiting to fill those vacant positions. The agency is also required to identify any changes to policies, procedures, or recruitment activities that negatively impact the agency's efforts to reduce its vacancies. The agency has 0 vacancies at this time, is not recruiting to fill any vacant positions, has no changes to policies, procedures, or recruitment activities that negatively impact the agency's efforts to reduce its vacancies. And that is the end of the recommendation. So it's a public hearing, so we have to open it up for public hearing.
We don't have a gavel, but we'll open this for a public hearing at this time. Anybody can come up, speak on this item, please come forward.
I want to speak on the last one.
Yes.
No, that's ridiculous.
Uh,
I'm sorry I don't like it.
I'll tell you what, that's not whether I like it or not, but we're just following procedure. If you somehow would like to tie in, we'll give you the time to what it is that we're talking
I
about.
think it's, we should have a vote on it. Even if it's a special election, because you guys are just guessing at what's gonna happen. When I was here in August, nobody knew what equipment they were gonna use, nobody knew how long it was gonna take, nobody knew how long, what much it was gonna cost. But yet, I believe it was August or September, probably August, when there were 4 BBK lawyers sitting here, because you were hot to trot to get that money, because that's what happens. Oh, well, we gotta get this money. You put people's back up against the wall, and you don't really.
So, Mr. Branson, I'm sorry about that, but if you want to catch me after the meeting,
No, I don't.
I'm hearing
I
similar.
don't, because I've heard this from you before, to talk to you later. No, we got a right to talk now.
Well, that portion of the meeting
And
is
then,
over. We're in a public hearing right now.
I know, that's why I'm talking. So back then, you didn't know what the hell you were doing. You were spending 10 years of spending money, and then you want to make everybody owe money, and nobody has a clue. You just kind of move it along. Let's find out something.
Can you somehow tie this into our subject that we're talking about?
No,
Could I just say something, Mr. Bogranski?
yeah,
You're talking about, getting, the community being able to take a vote or whatever. Wouldn't it be nicer to know if it, all these figures that we've been hearing out in town is 100 million, 150 million, like we'll know?
been working on for what, 10 years? And do the same thing like Big Bear Lake does? They wait till the last minute, put your back up against the wall? No. So I'm done. Thank you very much. I'll see you on your special council meeting that you don't let anybody know about. When is that?
I think it's 28th. There's 20, yeah, absolutely, come and speak there. We'll be talking about the subject again.
I know you will. I'm surprised you haven't voted Kendi out yet.
All we've done is promote her. I intend to keep doing it. So I'm going to have to interrupt this, and if we can't keep the meeting in order, I'm gonna have to call a recess. I'll have to call a recess
You just said it was time for public comment.
on this particular item.
Comment about it.
Okay.
The fact
Thank you.
that there has been a mandate put on all new regulations, federal regulations, and if you are in fact trying to get grant money, those regulations are put on hold. So I think you should consider that. And also Trump has also made an initiative that they're going to be looking for ways to lower our bills. And there's a lot of stuff going to be going on with the state of California with the water. And so all these new things are coming down the pipe. And I think that a lot of this stuff I think we need to wait for whatever you're trying to do. There's gonna be a holding pattern here in the next couple of months, whether or not you like it or not, we have a new president. And he's gonna try to, and he's putting a lot of this stuff on hold while we're sorting stuff out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have more questions.
Are you calling a recess or not?
No, I think it's back to somebody order.
Okay. Are we going to have discussion after the presentation here?
I think they did.
Well, since this was just handed to me with somebody who has something stuck in their eye, I'm still sorting out what to do next. So,
So we're just having a public hearing about Assembly Bill 2561. And,
But you would normally introduce what that is. That's what you said.
right, and that's what that was done,
Okay.
presentation was done, and so now he opened up the public hearing
Yeah.
with regard to Assembly Bill 2561.
okay, it's a little out of order, but I'll close the public hearing at this time. We have questions from the board members.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, when Replenish Big Bear was discussed, there was a proposal to hire 3 new positions. Someone in either the yard or the lab. Another finance person to handle specifically the grants and payments and audits and all that. And an assistant for you, because your focus would become the new plant. And Bridget. It's not name related, it's just that that's the position. It's Bridget that will
That's right.
take over the.
Day-to-day operations.
I'm sorry, I forgot what your title is like.
Administrative Services Manager.
slash.
Board secretary.
Got it. So when we say that there are no vacant positions, this does not include at least two of those three positions that were planned for replacement, right?
That is correct, because we haven't been approved for those positions.
And if I'm understanding the question that came from Joyce, this assembly bill is state.
That's correct.
So if Trump has put out an executive order that puts some actions in question, his executive order has nothing to do with this.
It does not.
So that's why this is still going ahead. Okay,
Any other questions? For a motion?
This is an informational only item.
Okay. Nothing to
Just
do.
motion, I'm just following the instructions. Where's Jen? Bring it back.
Put something in your eye.
Okay, where are we now? We're now moving on to item 10B. This is the purchasing policy amendment.
Assembly Bill 2192, effective on the 1st of January, raised the bid limit thresholds for UPHA. Projects to be performed by employees of a public agency by forced account, negotiated contract or purchase order has been increased to 75,000 or less. Projects to be contracted by informal bidding procedures is now up to 220,000. And projects to be contracted by formal bidding procedures are now over 220,000. Staff recommends approving automatic UPHA threshold adjustments to align with changes made by newly passed legislation. Another part of the amendment for the purchasing policy is federal procurement standards. There's a line in the sand of October 1st. So there's been updates to the policy. The red line version was included in your packet. 2 items to note is employment and labor practices and also recycled goods. But other than that, I'm open to any questions that you have.
Questions?
yes.
Ms. Larry?
Are we required to take these new numbers, or is it an option? Can we actually stay right where we are and not increase?
Actually, that's a word question, but I believe if we want to stay with UPCA, I think we are required to.
Correct. And that,
I'm sorry, I couldn't-
We're required to go with the new numbers. And we're required to update it if we want to stay as an UPCA agency.
Okay, that's what you said.
Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. That's what it stands for.
UPCCA, people. So we cannot, in and of our own, decide not to go to 75 grand, but to stay at 60. We don't have a choice if we're going to
that's correct.
participate. Because I thought that the CSD backed off some of these numbers and chose to stay at lower numbers.
I can answer that if you want. I can answer that if you want.
Please,
As stated, part of the regulation of being part of the UPCA, you have to accept their numbers. So the increasing from 60 to 75 and the 200 to 220 as an agency, you have to accept. We accepted our as general manager and finance manager level lower, so that we had that range where we at the board between 60 and 75 for that approval. But those projects that are, and I've forgotten the term for the ones up to 75
Forced account.
ones, that level is what we accepted at CSD, but we have GM level lower than that, we still come to the board and saying that 200 to 220.
we already have the situation where professional contracts don't have to go out for bid, don't have to be competitive. Most people understand that we are supposed to get at least 3 bids and go for the lowest unless you can find some reason why the lowest one's not acceptable. But this pushes beyond that to say not only attorneys or engineers or consultants in specialty fields, architects. This would apply to virtually everything. And we are granting ourselves the ability then to go out. And as long as we keep it at 219,999. We can do it by informal bidding, not formal, correct?
Yes, but the main difference between informal and formal is putting it in the Grizzly paper or not. We still send it out to bid boards, we still send it out to local contractors. We still do the exact same process. The only difference is that we don't advertise in the Grizzly for an informal process.
You're still doing it, but would you have to under this new?
Our purchasing
Yes.
policy requires it.
Yes, we still have to follow those procedures. And for professional services contracts, we do an RFP, just like we're doing for our auditing services. And the board is part of that evaluation. 2 members of the board are part of that evaluation for engineers. No, I'm sorry, auditors, legal counsel, and I think there's 2 other items that the board is included in that evaluation process. It's not just that staff is choosing at their will. We just don't have to do that competitive bidding process like we do for construction contracts.
Just comment regarding this, if there's something that comes forward and maybe it fits under the qualifications that, it doesn't have to go out for bid, what threshold are you bringing things to us for approval? And if there's something that is interesting, is a nice way to put it, hopefully you bring it to the board so that the board is not caught by surprise, by
that's-
something that's
yeah.
unusual.
That would never be our intention, is to catch the board off the surprise. So everything has to be budgeted, right? So if it doesn't have a budget appropriation, we'd be coming back to the board for a budget appropriation. So you'd be informed, hey, that we put $219.99 to a project. And at that point, if we thought the bids were gonna come under that, we would be telling you, okay, this would be, we would go out for an informal bid process and let the board know, we would do it in like a general manager report or something like that for those kind of a project, but very rarely. And nowadays, especially with the cost of things, very rarely does, projects come in, below that kind of figure.
So the board is not gonna be surprised by driving down the road and seeing a Ferris wheel.
We're,
At the end of the story.
no, yeah, it's never gonna.
I just wanna,
No,
I wanna make sure we still have control over what's going on with the budgeting and with, basically approvals and moving forward so that we're fully informed of what's happening.
100%. You guys approve the budget and I can't appropriate money into a capital project or any of those things that would all be board approved. So never be surprised. Never the intention.
Okay, are there any further questions on the side? Is there a motion on the side?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. He's back. We have a motion and a second for approval of item 10, the purchasing policy amendment. As written.
Do we have a motion second? Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Herrick,
Aye.
Director Segovia,
Aye.
Director Walsh,
No,
Chair Miller.
Aye.
See.
Next item is to appropriate $35,000 for the Cactus Flat Outfall Line Repair Project from the contingency fund.
So we've been carrying this project for quite some time. We've had a huge, let's say, effort and undertaking to get approval from the Forest Service to actually go in and do the repairs to our line and frankly, the Southwest Gas line. That's both exposed. One of the requirements was that the county had to fix the drainage system coming from the transfer station, which they did. That was probably the biggest stumbling block for Forest Service. They said, hey, this is just gonna happen again if they don't fix what they did up top. So they came in and actually spent a bunch of money to fix that up top and they completed that. Being the fact that, so after that, we had a discussion with Southwest Gas. They wanted to move forward with construction. They needed environmental, done. So we have made a tentative, agreement that we would take care of the environmental portion of the project. And do a little traffic control, and they would handle the construction of, repairing the, exposed line. And, of course, they have, run by their design, criteria by us. We've looked it over, approved that, design criteria. So, this would just give us the opportunity to, do the environmental review and, move forward with the repair, hopefully in the spring, early summer.
Yes. The pipe is not fractured, correct?
It is not,
The repair, we're talking about basically,
it,
recovering the pipe.
it's recovering the
I
pipe.
just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, and this is in a, remember, this is in a, drainage ditch. So that since a lot of the drainage has now, moved elsewhere, because they were focusing their drainage into this channel. It's moved elsewhere, that's why you don't see a lot of additional, debris on top of our line or undermining of our line. So it's in a much better, position, but we really do want to get it, repaired.
Okay, so the source of the problem has been corrected,
Yes, sir.
and in theory won't happen again.
Yes, sir.
The other was, is this plastic, metal, or cement asbestos?
The line itself is a, steel lined, lined and encased concrete pipe. It's the Outfall line.
Okay, so it hasn't been sitting out for the last 9 years in the sun frying plastic pipe.
It has not. It's a concrete.
So all it has to do is,
Steel pipe, there's got a concrete encasement and concrete on the inside.
Yeah.
So it's all concrete. It's concrete.
Concrete inside.
Steel concrete. Water flows through the concrete. Concrete line, concrete encased.
I just have one question, when did this happen? How long has this been?
It was actually before I got here. Yeah. And so, we've hit quite a few stumbling blocks, but, a lot has to do with, well, everything has to do with the Forest Service. They have a lot of turnover at the Forest Service with their district directors. And so, every time we, got some momentum, we had, Mark Stamer put the caveat that we had to get the county to do their job, so we went in and had the county do their job. And then, he left, and then we had another one, and then another one, and then finally we got to a point where they were saying, well, you don't have a permit to even be here. I mean, it's been a huge issue with them, so we're working details out. They're gonna issue a new permit, I think.
Yes.
For us.
So the question I have is that, how long, we have how many miles that goes to the national forest?
17 miles.
17 miles goes to the national forest, what, take 7 years, 8 years? Yeah. So it's taken to account.
40 feet.
Yeah, for 20 feet, we're dealing with.
And remember, we were going to stick our attorneys on them, but then they said, hey, you can't do that, 'cause you don't even have a permit.
So,
Well, because we've been paying the permit every year, but somehow in the 90s. Was it in the 90s? They deleted the permit from their system. Us and Southwest Gas and everybody else, they just deleted the permit.
That we pay the fees currently every year, but I was directly told from one of the managers that we do not have a permit. And I said, well, that's not how I do it, so. If you go in that area, if you do any work, it's $50,000 fine. And we will fine you and could be arrested, whatever. And when we met down there with the Forest Service, there were 7 different people from the Forest Service just to handle this little tough buried pipe back.
well,
But at the moment, they're in agreement.
At the moment, they're in agreement.
They actually told us that they gave us a permit.
Yeah.
And we told them, if you would have given us a permit between us and Southwest Gas, this job would be completed years ago. They go, well, we think we did, well, if you said we have a permit, you could just get it done. So we have to get a permit to work in the Forest Service area.
But it's just for that 20 feet.
Yes,
That's correct.
and then we're gonna, but they are supposed to issue us a new permit,
Correct.
even though that we already paid for the existing permit.
The permit's just to do the current work.
Right, the other permit to have the line in the forest, we pay that on a yearly basis.
New administration.
Well, when I took a tour of the plant with you a year ago, you told me you didn't think they would ever fix it, and I'm glad that they did.
Yes,
Because you told me about the uncovered pipe and all that,
yes,
so at least that happened.
we're working on it right now.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second it.
We don't need to, you know, that's the general public comment.
You do.
Anybody wishing to speak on this item?
This time you get to speak on it.
Yes.
This specific item. We have a motion.
I seconded
A motion and second, discussion on that. Roll call please.
Vice Chair Herrick,
Aye.
Director Segovia,
Aye.
Director Walsh,
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye. Next item is public testimony time limits.
The general manager was asked to prepare an agenda item, to discuss time allocation. Currently, non-agenda items are 3 minutes, agenda items are 5 minutes per bar one. On the second page of your staff report, we prepared a table with other local agency time limits. 3 minutes is common for both agenda items and non-agenda items, although CSD and MWD both allow 5 minutes for one of those or both. And so we just need direction to see if the governing board would like to change the public time testimony limits or keep it the same as the ordinances.
Our board members. Comments.
They still have a question. I thought when we had public comment, it was either supposed to be on topics over which we had some authority or a specific action. So I look at meetings and I go, how do we listen to a double French horn recital? If we're talking Barwa and the city connection to Barwa, I understand. But if we have people protesting what the Forest Service is doing, that's not on our purview, other than trying to get a permit out of it. Are we obliged to listen to, I don't want to use the term irrelevant, but unrelated comments that are not within our authority?
No.
Is that on agenda items or is that under public forum? Are you asking on the public forum or?
Both.
It's just matters within your jurisdiction. Even for non-county, right?
So we could respectfully ask someone to stop talking and have a seat. If it's not on the subject over which we have.
You could choose to just listen to them, or ask them, not to stop.
To somehow make it related.
Yeah.
Some people are very good at that.
We're not.
So just further thoughts, board. So, the city has different rules, regarding public comment. One of it's, I know this for some might infringe on First Amendment, or excuse me, it's First Amendment rights is that, they can say basically whatever they would like to say. But we have rules not addressing individual council members and maybe board members or personal attacks that are really not attached to a particular item. It's just, it's a forum for explaining their displeasure of certain board members. Can that be regulated?
You mean not attacking board members?
Right, not addressing board members individually because it inspires a conversation going back and forth, which is probably not the most appropriate thing to happen during our meetings.
Yeah, you're saying the city already does that, is that correct?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
wondering, yes,
I mean, you could do the same thing, but the reason why I believe that the public comments of this video are more wide ranging is because the subject matter, because the city has police powers, you know, and its subject matter is so much greater than a wastewater agency, so there's probably why you get a little bit more wide ranging in terms of the types of comments you get from the city.
well, actually, I think we get wider range comments here.
Oh, yeah.
It covers all kinds of interesting subjects. But do we have to have a specific rule? We have to write a policy or rule regarding that, or
I think it
or
would
can the
be,
chairman just say, you know, try to link it into whatever subject it is we happen to be talking about, so that there's some relevance to the business we're trying to conduct.
yeah, I think to be fair and even, it would be best if it was.
I'm sorry, say it again.
To be fair and even handed, it would be best if it was in writing, so everybody knew what the rules were in advance.
Got it.
Bridget puts that in under public forum, there's a paragraph. And she explains that we should and should not do. Periodically, the chair or vice chair will remind people that the public comment is not for chit chat back and forth. It's your option to speak, our option to listen, and then we have our, there's not supposed to be this back and forth when it does disintegrate badly. So is this something you think you guys looked at?
The paragraph?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because that's where I would go back to, is it says things we have control over. Not. Don't wanna bang on that poor kid, but I don't wanna listen to somebody playing French horn. That's not why we're here. So we have the authority to say, no thanks.
So if we have the authority to do that, then I think it needs to be in that public forum statement. Because I don't think it's clear enough there. I mean, I'm used to doing the regular city councils and usually at the public forum, I'm allowed to get up and pretty much talk about it. Was done that. That if it's just restricted strictly to this jurisdiction and the agency, which is obviously much more defined than what the city does. So I would think that in that comment, we need to really specifically say that you're not talking about bar work. Typically, then that's not an appropriate item to bring up. I don't think it.
Well, and I can make that because of the 5 minutes.
Right, I understand. I'm just saying that
Do we need 5 minutes?
for that. Maybe we don't need 5 minutes, but it's the city's 3 minutes.
Public forum for non-agenda items is 3 minutes.
Agenda items is 5, non-agenda items is 3,
That is correct.
public forum is up
Is
to,
3.
or say non-agenda.
Up to 15 minutes or up to 30 minutes or.
It doesn't say.
Now, that statement does say, public testimony is permitted at this time only on consent calendar items, any item on the agenda other than action items, and other matters not listed on the posted agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the agency. Do you want that to be changed, or is that not clear enough?
Well, we need to have a policy on this. I think we need to have a written policy. I mean, my feeling is if we're gonna stand, if somebody walks up and starts talking, I think we need to be able to say, sorry, interrupting somebody during the public forum, even though it may not be specifically, because it's just one of those protocol things I'm not used to doing, is allow, just give people their opportunity to speak and you move on, but if we're gonna tell somebody, no, I'm sorry, you have to sit back down, we have to create a pretty strong policy that says we're allowed to do that. I would think.
Made it clear before.
Yes, just because I think it's,
And yes, there is the First Amendment right, but that is not an absolute right.
well, but
You can't slander, you can't threaten. So to me, that's within the purview here to say, stay within the lines. And if you won't, we either take a recess until the person stops. You may even ask for a sergeant of arms if you have it. Sheriff sometimes shows up. If that doesn't work and the person still keeps going at it, then you can The board takes a break, waits for them to calm down. If that doesn't work, you adjourn the meeting. Or you can clear that authority.
Our policy is also that we can, the board chair can clear the room. And only admit back in. Building that we're part of the discussion.
Yeah, it's part of the brown act. I think all of you had a copy at one time. Okay. But we can put all this into one document as a policy and bring it back to the board if you would like us to do that.
That's the part of the board. I think it needs to be addressed. I agree. Policy. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. So, this may be a little bit of a touchy subject, but with the city, we also have rules, although we seem to be a little bit loose with how long a council member can speak and the appropriate time for comments, questions, and then discussion. So that there's a sense of fairness, everybody gets a chance to speak.
Is that what the 15 minutes is for?
Not for governing board members, no.
I think it had nothing.
We don't have anything, just out of a sense of fairness, because oftentimes if somebody new comes on, there's a sense of intimidation and they won't speak up unless it really is presented to them. Now I get my chance to speak. And
Well, and you
might
might
want
have
to
that
consider-
prior to the issue of your previous city councilman.
No, that's actually, when it became actually, that was the catalyst for us looking at those issues. I think the issues had previously been there. But it really depended who the mayor was and how they operated. To actually not necessarily cut them off, make sure that they were acknowledging that somebody else at the end of the table wanted to speak and would ask them to take a break. So it was a non-policy rule that's
So you want to add that?
around. Sorry.
If you're going to create a policy, you want to add that then in terms of.
I think it would make sense. I think it would make sense to include that. If there's a way to, I don't know, maybe mimic the cities. The cities are very strict with the rules they have, so maybe we don't want to be absolutely that strict. And, but something of that nature, since they don't have it in front of me, I can't tell you exactly what the verbiage is. But, we had timers and lights and everything else and countdowns and in order to try to even out the playing field for speaking.
Well, and that's why you got the timer here, wasn't it?
For public comment, yes.
Not so much for the board members.
But we can use,
No, but
we can use the timer, it's the same thing, you hear it go off. If you wanted to go ahead and do that, do you have a time limit in mind for governing board comment on each item?
I would try to mimic what the cities is, and I can't remember, there's 3 portions of the limitation. And, we mix it up a little bit, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, because I don't think that we actually start timing the council member unless it becomes,
If it was, but we were all respectful and so we
Yes,
all took our turns and then acknowledge other people, but we actually had somebody with a paddle, I think, holding a paddle. Which was very distracting.
but we really haven't had to, I mean, it's good for it to be there, right? In case we need to roll that out again.
Sure.
Okay. Did you want to make any changes to the public testimony time limits? While we're developing
I
this
think
policy?
3 minutes is.
Across the board?
I think so. I think 3 minutes. It just,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at.
it allows the person also to be very focused in on what it is they want to say, get to the point of what it is they want to say, because I think all of us are looking for ideas and thoughts from the public. As long as they're clear and succinct, where you can understand them, it maybe goes on too long, and maybe in the 5-minute period of time, it might wander a little bit. Get off the point that the speaker's trying to make.
You're suggesting 3.
I'm suggesting.
So do we want to move? We want to have to bring this back when it's what we're talking.
Did you get a chance to comment on this before you?
We haven't done anything yet.
Not yet. Open it up to public comment.
And by the way, the board does have the ability to grant additional time
Yes.
as well. Always.
I don't have any cards.
Any cards you want, everybody wishing to speak on?
No, no, you can come after us.
So first off, I don't want to see my board members restricted. I want you guys to be able to say what you need to say, because that's what you're there for. And I think we do have a right to be able to address board members, say, I agree with Segovia, I agree with Larry, or I don't agree with what so-and-so said. I think it's ridiculous that we can't address the board members. And I do agree that they need to be the presentation on issues. Now, I think that I should also, and some of our board members should be able to have additional time on these hot issues to have our own presentations. I think we should limit some of these outside presentations because they can go on for an hour. Well, you're trying to limit us to the amount of time that we can address these issues and our own ideas of what we think we should do for our community. And so there are some things that we should be given additional time for. And I think you guys are planning for a very upset community, because when you try to come back with this replenish, you're gonna get a lot of people coming in here. And I don't think that you should restrict us being able to talk about that, try to limit us. Oh, you only have 3 minutes to complain about what we're trying to do. I don't think that's right. And I don't think we should limit us to 3 minutes. I think we should have our 5, because this is our community and we have a right to voice. And I do understand that you're having problems with people talking about things that aren't related. I know that, you know, there's a lot of community stuff that's going on that isn't in your wheelhouse, and I get that part. So I agree with that we should stick to what you guys actually got control of. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think we have a right to speak about things that are related to water, like the forest fires and things. We have a right to speak about that. It's a limited amount of time. And if you can't take it for 3 or 5 minutes or whatever, I think that's just too bad. We have things in the community we can talk about to show our concerns. Not, oh, we'll talk to you afterwards. And you know what? I happen to like the French horn. I think that's the best part of our Big Bear Lake Council, to tell you the truth. And I especially like the Alpine horn. You know, it breaks it up, it makes it nice, and you bring the public in. You know, I know that most of you don't like what I say. But you know, for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you should be able to take it without crying. You know? It's not taking all night. You know, how many people do you get here? Monday, there was what, 2 or 3 people that spoke? How many at CSD? I mean, you can't take it? You can't get a few comments? And somebody can't talk about the damn donkeys? Oh. I volunteered to go and I'm working on that. So when we get some, the council or committee input, I'm complaining about 2 trees out at Castle Rock. I think it's life and death. I think the mules are life and death. Hey, that's part of the community. And you guys can't listen for the 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you're gonna try to change it to? Because you don't like people like me to speak up? Doesn't take all night. So I just wonder what's your point? And you can't take a little bit of heat? Mr. Herrick? That we can't call your name? So we'll find out about that one. Because just because you make a rule doesn't make it constitutional. You know, there are First Amendment. I'm not sitting here going, no, there's a fire. We all gotta run. You should be able to listen to the public. Maybe they do say some things. Some people do drive me crazy about when they repeat the same thing during a speech over and over and over. You know, sometimes I want to jump off a building listening to them. But I kind of like the 3 minutes because you do focus on it. I try never to repeat. To make sure there's some clarity, but you guys should be able to listen. Because you don't know exactly what's related. So thank you. Taking my time back.
Judy, is your comment on this item, the public testimony time limits?
Yeah, I think it might, I think that I do.
Okay.
I don't know where, well, what I want to say, thank you for listening to me, and I'm not really sure, I don't really come to a lot of these meetings, I try to go to the CSD meetings, and I can understand after everything they discuss, they allow for public input. I'm confused, and I'm trying to find on this agenda, after item 9A, the old business replenish where you were all having the discussion. And then everyone got a little riled and wanted to say something, but you said we had already done it.
Yes.
Prior, but where? Because I'm trying to find it. Wouldn't it be after you had spoke and before you chose? Because it hit a button. And isn't that, you're representing us? It hit a button. We should, I don't know where you're putting it. I know at CSD, it's after they discuss it, I believe they allow for public opinion, and I'm not sure, and then they go back to do the vote. I'm not 100% sure on that, it's still kind of new. Regarding time limits or this other point about the permits, are you the attorneys right here?
Not me.
Okay, because whoever the permit person was, that said it was deleted. And who's held accountable? Don't you have a hard copy of that permit?
Yes.
And so what's the deal? If you have it, isn't that your job if you were the attorney? I don't know what your job is. I don't know who you are.
I'm the plant manager.
But wouldn't you be going after them and saying, or just letting them get away with the permit is deleted, so we're still paying money, but now we have to pay for another permit for just this one little situation when you had a permit for the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Who's being held accountable to all of these things? And the other thing that caught my attention was this 50-year-old rotor, whatever you said it's 50 years. And I know like on the vehicle replacements, to me, a proper management and accountability, that's why I think there's no accountability. What if we have plans built in to replace it instead of, you said you didn't do it because it was so expensive, you waited till it died? I don't know if that's wise. I don't know who's deciding these things and who's holding them to accountability. So, and that's all I just want to say, and I really am sad that you didn't let us speak.
On 9A, 6 people spoke during public forum.
But
That's when you speak on it, on 9A.
but then you get to discuss it and make decisions that are new to us. Because, I came all summer to these meetings, and to me, the people are not for that. I don't care if we have something for the money. I just say, let's stop it. We don't want to go forward. So I don't know how, if you can adjust it on the agenda where we do get to say something after you discuss it. Because I think that's the right time, because I think the people spoke on a few things, but then all of a sudden the discussion went in a whole different direction, and then you're having more time on talking about time, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, than talking about the replenish, discussion about that. I thought you guys were very animated talking about 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I think the more important thing is that money being spent on a project that nobody wants, or a lot of people don't.
Well, I think, we're going to bring is if we will provide staff direction to bring this back to us in the form of a policy.
And part of that policy should be the discussion, is it before or after?
What is wrong about the Robert's Rules of Order? I mean, that's the way.
I mean, the normal way is that staff presentation, questions to staff, public forum, back to us to discuss, and then at that point, maybe a motion is developed or not developed. But once a motion is made and it's voted on, that agenda item is done. It doesn't, we don't
It's
reopen
voted
it.
on, yes,
We don't reopen.
it's no longer open.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, what I'm hearing is they want to hear the presentation, staff presentation. Then they want to be able to voice concerns, yay, nay, whatever, which might give us, might trigger a new thought. Then the board discusses it. We beat it to death for a while, don't vote on it. But then do we give it back? Once we've made some discussions, maybe we come up with things that the public hasn't thought of. So does it become a before and after?
That's not typical.
Yes, I mean, it could be, I'll just jump in.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that. But generally, I would say generally it's agenda item, the public has certain opinions regarding it that they've already written out and they want to express those. So I think it's appropriate for us to ask staff the questions after the staff presentation and try to get us,
Well, the hammer has to stop at one point, understood?
yeah, so that that kind of triggers maybe if they have another thought in the audience that they like to.
Would that still be
Then
under
discussion, then it comes back to us.
to say, okay, somebody wants to speak, does the chair have the option? to say,
Yes, there have been opportunities where the chair does have the opportunity to do that. Typically, again, with back to a policy issue, it has to be something different than what they got up, what the original, it has to be like, if you said something, person that comes up and says, can you please clarify that point for me? It can't be another 5 minutes of, whatever they think about the project or whatever they think about the item. And that's where it gets kind of, it's the policy realm, is that you gotta be able to say, okay, does anybody have something else they wish to add to this discussion? Not a repeat of what they've already said. Because that's how I think I've experienced in the past, is that when the chair does reopen it up again, it's usually on a very narrow platform.
Okay, and I've asked about a policy manual, is that in that policy?
That process is not in any policy, but we can add it to this one if you like. The process of what it, public forum, public comment.
So we'd be doing it differently than like, okay, we don't do it like that, fire board,
But even then, the fire board, you make your comments before,
right?
open comments, just general French or blank. But CSD changed it to general comments now at the end.
After the vote.
After all
After the
the,
whole
agenda-
meeting.
yeah, after all the agenda.
Oh, I see.
After all.
Because sometimes people don't want to stay around that long.
The board does have an opportunity, like, after the staff presentation, then it comes back to the board for discussion. Then, they open up for public comment, right? And then there's a motion typically, but then there's an opportunity for the board to discuss again.
That's the motion.
And during the motion, right, they have an opportunity to, is there any further discussion? A lot of times you'll hear the chair ask that question, and then you can address or ask some additional questions at that point.
But you're not allowing public, right?
No, it would be, yeah, then it would be kind of redundant at that point.
It's just the way around, I just understand what you're saying.
Not to get off the subject, but the fire board is traditionally has been very loose with whoever speaks up. And I'm not sure if that's the best way to handle it, again, because there are people who won't speak, because they feel intimidated, because somebody like me will just speak up. Larry will speak up.
So that some
Andy will
people,
speak up, we'll all speak up. That's not everybody in the room.
you've seen where some people thought they were being ignored. Okay,
Yeah.
and CSD has a dais that's curved, so we're going to see each other. This is straight, that's why I keep bringing it back, because if Kenny's trying to make eye contact with you, that'll be in the way.
Yeah.
So just the nature of the facility could be a problem.
Yep.
City council, you guys horseshoe.
Yep.
And even, watching through the camera later, I can usually hear when people gasp something said or whatever. I do want the people to have their option to speak. I play French horn and I still don't want to hear the French horn. That's part of the meeting. Trying,
The truth comes out.
I've had people call at 6:45 on a Sunday with questions and said, well, they wanted to catch me before going to church. Thanks. So yes, I do want, and is there any possibility when the people are speaking? You notice we had 2 people tonight, Sandy never speaks up. And the first gentleman, I could not hear him. Is that the nature of our microphone or is it their problem?
It's how close they're speaking to the microphone.
You mean like me sitting this far back?
Yes.
I just think we need to bring this back in a policy.
Yeah.
Have a policy, and I think maybe take a look at what the city does. I agree with Rick, I don't think it should be, I know the city went through a lot there for a while, it's pretty strict, I don't think it ought to be that strict. I think it's worth looking into this, to about secondary comments, but again, my experience with that is that those only happen when it's very focused. It's on an issue that you want it to be focused. Well, or it's additional to what has already been discussed. It can't be, something brand new gets brought up during the council or the board's discussion. Follow-up questions to that probably appropriate, but to go back and reiterate everything that's gone through that point is fine.
One last question. So you wanted to change the timelines to 3 minutes across the board. So if you want us to bring the ordinance for that back along with this policy.
Yes,
Yes, everybody's in agreement?
I believe so. That was the final motion.
I don't think that there's a requirement, motion, just that discussion under it.
Just
So we'll be rolling out. SCADA professional services agreement with ROI Engineering LLC.
Yeah, so this is actually a professional service. They come up and provide service to our SCADA system. And we've had, I think it was a 3-year contract. Is that right?
Individual years.
Okay, so we've been doing individual year contract, and to lock in our pricing, we'd like to go to a 5-year contract with them. And so that's what this does. Our policy is anything more than a 1-year commitment comes to the board for consideration. And we would like to do a 5-year commitment to this company for SCADA services.
Board member?
Just a couple questions. So, I know it's a complicated system.
Yeah.
And have you looked at somebody in-house who can do it? And I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job, just a question of, is that even possible?
Yeah, we unfortunately, a lot of this is like outside programming. So we get a new piece of equipment or an updated software to a piece of equipment. So a lot of this is, we're talking about timers and things that run automatic situation. So, we're really looking for those professionals for actual programming of this, writing code for us. And so we're not as comfortable having our own staff do that. We do have a couple of staff members that, support the company, but we don't have any experts in actual programming of this.
So then, things like flow meters, I presume are part of the SCADA.
It is.
Okay. Who fixes those?
The flow meters are sent out to a private company if they need to be.
They're not part of this contract.
It is not part of this contract. Flow meters are something separate. They are tracked in our SCADA system, but the actual flow meters are a private company. What's that facing?
MCRG takes care of those.
I wholly support it. Years ago, when SCADA first came out, it sounded like a miracle.
Yeah,
to have machines watch all this stuff as opposed to having somebody look at valve pressure, whatever that can be, the issue. So I'm wholly supportive. Just want to make sure that we're getting the money, so it's not that.
Right, we are, they're 24 hours a day, so we're on the weekend, holidays, doesn't matter, they respond, and they can log in, remotely to fix any issues.
Any comments, questions? Walsh.
2025 was 12,000. 2026 is 27,000.
That's only for half the year,
The 12,
but yeah,
got it. So are we hoping that it will be slightly progressive at about 28,000 a year?
It was originally, they've had a lot of increased costs, insurance costs, fuel costs, everything like that, so.
But you're not anticipating huge balloons in the next
Just
couple
this
of
year was the first one we had a huge one, for approximately $289 a month.
All right, anybody, Brian, wish you to speak on this item?
What's that? Ladies first.
So, as far as I know in some of the work that I do, sometimes I can have staff do things that are easy instead of having to call somebody that you have a contract with. So I'm wanting to know if there's, flexibility on this contract that says that you have somebody that can, fix a light switcher, for instance. And it's something that's simple, that you don't have to call an expensive service, especially if it's in the middle of the night where they're gonna charge you extra because it's a nighttime service. That's my question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead.
we just pay a flat rate for the support. So whether we call it night or day, it doesn't matter, we just pay a flat, and we're not talking about, fiction like, lights, we have personnel that, do regular maintenance on everything you can think of at this plant. This is highly complex programming of equipment like, our belt press, those kind of things that we need to have that on an automated basis, and they program that automation for us. So that's the support we're talking. So it's highly complex. It wouldn't be something that we would, again, we support them, but it's, the actual programming itself is an engineering team.
I have operators, I don't have any computer programmers, the guy that does it for us is an actual computer programmer, he does all the ladder logic, all the stuff, there's one item that it's on, off, remote timer. The ladder logic's involved in one item, it's very intensive. So, you'll see him programming new headworks, it was very intense, many days.
Would it be fair to say that if we stepped in and tried to work on it, it would cost us even more?
I wouldn't let you touch it. But, sorry.
We'd be pushing buttons that don't work.
No, you don't push buttons. Gotta be certified to do that.
They don't even let me push buttons. You pushed the wrong one.
Dave can't.
I don't turn valves and I don't push buttons. That's what they told me. All right, fine.
Yeah, we'll bring this back, we have a motion. I'll make the motion.
Second.
In a second, roll call please.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Director Segovia,
Aye.
Director Walsh,
Aye.
and Chair Miller.
Aye. All right, item 11, moving on to general manager comments.
I have no additional comments.
Any more governing board members have comments?
Yes.
Director Walsh.
Monday's meeting, an agenda packet in large, bold, full caps, discussion only. And then we proceeded to make a motion. Was that in violation?
It's a weird question. We did put discussion only on the agenda.
Or,
I don't want to comment on somebody else's agenda.
no, agenda here.
It was so on our agenda, we published it as discussion only. They chose to, actually, they didn't really actually take any.
We're just kind of reaffirming that we're gonna continue.
To the motion, I seconded it.
Oh, okay, so there was a motion actually taken and second, but it was really there was actually no change. They didn't change anything, they didn't do anything. It actually did, all it did was like, hey, we're gonna bring it back to you with a list of things that we're already doing. So it wasn't actually any action taken, except the fact that we were bringing, that we're gonna bring that list to them of what's already in the JPA agreement. So they didn't really actually take any action, but I guess there was a motion made.
I made the motion.
And then, and they
It will be along the lines of when we say something was done by consensus. Where's the dividing line on when something is a motion and a second? Is that's an actionable item and therefore it should have been on the agenda and must be made public beforehand?
But if there was an action item that actually did something to move the project forward, I would say that would need to be on the agenda. But if you took an action to continue to do what you're already doing, then I don't see that seems like the move motion anyway. So I don't see that as about that particular motion, and specifically, I don't see that as a violation of the ground.
And so it was just to bring it back, actually. Right, the subtle thing was, we're gonna continue to say, we just wanna review it during our budget period of time to make sure that we're not missing something.
It's, in essence, it established a policy. But you wanted to see it at the budget discussion.
well, you already see the same items. You actually see the items, it's just, we would highlight them as this is your fix, this is your variable in the existing budget that you already see.
Actually, I wouldn't mind putting it back to a future agenda item, but we do make policy. So that
That's what I'm asking, is that it occurred to me that, like the previous one, that was our discussion.
Right.
I mean, there was no doubt that you did not want a motion, you wanted discussion only.
Right, and that was because of the
And then what do we do?
potential financial impact to the other agencies.
Okay.
Right, and that's what that was, but if the board would like us to bring that back,
Well, if it's legal, that's why I was asking, is I wondered if we had just,
I can have,
Jeopardize.
I don't think that's illegal at all, because again, you didn't really actually take any action to do anything.
If it's simply a motion to get direction and a recommendation was to get direction, then I don't see that that's an issue.
and so you're the one that would defend us in court and would do it for free, because you just made the decision.
You've been pretty bored, be careful with that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any comments, board members? Are we good? All right, so now we need adjournment.
We could actually have that discussion on a holiday and on the celebration of our inauguration. I think that should be illegal.